Hello, son. It's been a while.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Season 2, Episode 3 of... So, last week's episode focused a lot on Mark and Debbie's trauma following Nolan's betrayal last season.
No one thinks you're going to turn out like your father.
But then why would you even say it?
Mark is struggling to be the hero his father was supposed to be, while simultaneously living in fear of becoming the monster that we saw last season. Last week's episode also focused a lot on Debbie's grief, and episode 3 continued that theme brilliantly.
I can't heal because my husband's not dead. He's just gone.
So, we can assume that there has been a 3-month summer time skip between now and that previous episode. That episode showed Mark graduating from high school, and this one opens with him starting college.
But college is a fresh start, and I want you to enjoy every second of it.
Now, seeing Debbie drop Mark off at college on her own was such an important moment to showcase Nolan's absence, foreshadowing his return at the end of the episode. When Debbie tells Mark not to do drugs, he says,
Would they even work on me?
Now, this reminded us of the scene in last week's episode where after graduation, Mark turns down an alcoholic beverage because he's on the clock.
I'm on call. Cecil might need me.
Now, we discussed in that episode's Easter egg video if alcohol could even affect Mark with him being such a powerful being. Heroes like Captain America and Superman are unable to become drunk. Now, Mark seemed under the impression that alcohol would still affect him, but now, 3 months later, he's questioning if drugs would even have any effect. Now, this could be playing into the 3-month time skip between these two episodes, giving us the impression that Mark is learning more and more about himself and his new powers. Once she's back in her car, we see Debbie take out the SOS card we saw Olga give her in the first episode of this season.
What's this? Something that helped me.
In Mark's dorm, we see him put up a picture of Seance Dog. Now, in the comics, Mark's favorite hero is Science Dog, but in the show, they've changed it to a Doctor Strange-inspired Seance Dog. He's got the red cape, blue top, and yellow gloves like Strange wears in the comics, and his cameo in Thor Ragnarok.
So Earth has wizards now.
And I think it's fitting that they changed it up and gave us a Doctor Strange-inspired hero, since this season, after all, is playing with the multiverse. And this wasn't this episode's only reference to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but we're going to get to those in a bit. On William's side of the dorm room, we can see some posters, such as this Magnum PI poster featuring Tom Selleck, but instead of PI, it has the pi symbol. We've also got posters that are a play on Lady Gaga, except it says Lady Yaya, Lil Baz X, a reference to Lil Nas X, and then there's this DTF poster, which I'm sure is a pop culture reference to something that I don't know what it is.
Because you're old and not hip like me.
Oh, great. You know what it's referencing?
Oh yeah, of course I do. It's some kind of treat.
I'm sure that's true. Now, I am down, though, with the lingo enough to know that DTF, of course, stands for, well, you know, down to fornicate. So, this is clearly foreshadowing what goes down later in the episode with Mark losing his virginity. In Mark's box of collectible action figures, we can see a figure of Seance Dog, as well as the one-eyed octopus creature that's a reference to Gargantos from Multiverse of Madness. This one-eyed toy is also foreshadowing the return of Alan the Alien this episode. Now, we met Alan last season, but more on him in just a bit. Okay, so next we have Mark and Amber deciding to sleep together for the first time. And this is kind of unique for the genre. We never really get to see Peter Parker or Clark Kent lose their virginity, so it was interesting getting to see that part of a young hero's life. When Mark's shirt gets stuck on his head and they kiss, it reminded me of how Spider-Man's mask covered half his face when he and MJ kissed for the first time. And then we got veiled references to characters like Superman and Hulk when Amber asked if Mark would crush her during their act.
And you wouldn't accidentally crush me or something?
So when Mark and Amber start doing the deed, we hear a narrator chime in just like in the comics.
And so, dear audience, perhaps it's time to give Amber and Mark some privacy.
So this is when we catch up with Alan the Alien, voiced by none other than Seth Rogen.
Hey, Vorg. Hey, little buddy. Did you miss me?
Alan is part of a group called the Coalition of Planets, a group determined to stand up against the galactic conquering of the Viltrumites. Last season, we saw Alan and Mark meet up in the final moments of the finale, and it's here where Alan tells Mark about the Coalition of Planets and their fight against the Viltrumites.
The Coalition is trying to unite enough worlds to stop the Viltrumite Empire.
So in this flashback scene, we can see the Viltrumites destroying Alan's homeworld of Europa, and here we can see what looks like a very young Omniman taking part in the planet's destruction. Next, we see Thaddeus, the leader of the Coalition of Planets, who is voiced by the great Peter Cullen, most known for his portrayal of Optimus Prime.
Autobots, roll out!
So, after many of the Utopians were slaughtered by the Viltrumites, the ones who escaped began creating breeding camps to salvage their species. Not only were they creating new Utopians, but they were also creating them to be genetically enhanced and capable of taking on the Viltrumites. Now, Alan was the only success. All the other attempts had serious birth defects. And I love the attention to detail here when they considered a Utopian with 2 eyes to be a failure.
The results were Not promising.
Now, while Alan was very, very powerful, he was still unable to beat the Viltrumites, so he was made a planetary evaluation officer where he was sent to find worthy opponents who could join him as an ally to stand up against the Viltrumites. And what I found really interesting here was that we actually see Alan and Omni-Man fighting, which we heard references to last season. Part of Alan's job as an evaluation officer is to check and make sure that planets throughout the universe have worthy protectors. Alan has mistakenly been coming to Earth instead of another planet called Urath.
Urath? This is Earth!
Earth,
Yes!
not Urath.
No!
We hear him ask if Mark shaved his mustache, meaning that he thought he was fighting Omni-Man like before.
You shaved your mustache!
So this shot of Alan fighting Omni-Man is a callback to the very first time Alan mistakenly went to Earth instead of Urath, and he was fighting a Viltrumite Omni-Man without even knowing it.
Earth is off limits. There's a Viltrumite living on your planet.
So there's a lot of Superman imagery in the Invincible series, not only with Invincible and Omni-Man's power sets, but also with Alan the alien, from the artificial breeding to his super abilities to this line from the narrator when Alan arrives home.
Alan bears a rare and valuable gift for the Coalition: hope.
Now this mention of hope reminded me, of course, of Henry Cavill's Superman.
What's the S stand for?
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
Now, on the council, we see a council member who appears to be the same species as Battle Beast from Season 1.
Killing you is an act of mercy.
This line from Thaddeus about the Great Purge is also a callback to Season 1.
Viltrumite against Viltrumite. That has not happened since the Great Purge.
Now, in Season 1, we heard Nolan tell Mark that the Viltrumites slaughtered their own people that they considered to be weak.
In order for our people to reach their full potential, we had to remove the weak.
And you know, we gotta find a Star Wars reference when we can, and this line from Thaddeus reminded me of Mace Windu in The Phantom Menace.
You have done well, Alan, and given us much to discuss.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy?
In The Phantom Menace, Mace Windu says this to Qui-Gon Jinn upon hearing about Anakin Skywalker. Qui-Gon had brought forth a powerful young man who he believed to be the chosen one destined to destroy the Sith, and they sensed much fear in Anakin. That parallels this scene perfectly, with Alan bringing forth a powerful young man who he believes is the key to destroying the Viltrumite Empire. So, after the council meeting, Thaddeus warns Alan about a Viltrumite mole within their ranks that he wants Alan to seek out.
It's as if the Viltrumites had knowledge from inside the council.
If there's a mole, I'll find them.
That mole has quickly revealed to the Viltrumites that Omni-Man has abandoned Earth and that his son is still there. These Viltrumites then brutally attack Alan when he refuses to give up any information.
Where's the father now?
The father! Which one was he again? You Cyclops all kind of look the same to me.
So Alan's body has been savaged and he's on life support, but Thaddeus shuts down the life support, revealing himself to be the Viltrumite mole. Now in the comics, Thaddeus himself is a rebel Viltrumite. And right after this, we get a credit roll because it feels like the end of an episode. And granted, it is the end of Alan's story, well for now at least. Now I've always loved how this show plays with its title sequence and its credits. It really plays into the fourth wall breaking, meta-comedy, and references to the overall genre. Cutting back to Earth, we hear what sounds like a moan, making us think that we yet again walked in on Mark and Amber, but it's revealed to be Duplicate lifting weights. And I love the attention to detail here by having her spot herself. Kate and Rex get into an argument over what happened in the previous episode when Rex saw Kate showering with Immortal. He makes a crack about Immortal being really old, to which Kate responds with,
"But if you add up the amount of time my duplicates and I have lived, we are probably the same age."
But then it becomes even clearer why Kate is interested in Immortal on an emotional level. Immortal has died many times and been brought back to life. And that's something that Kate has experienced as well when her duplicates die in battle.
The Immortal's the only person I've ever met who's died as many times as I have.
Robot, or should I say Rudy, is working on mastering fear, and we can see above him the big live hologram feed of his brain. So this reminded me a lot of Aldrich Killian's brain hologram in Iron Man 3.
That's the brain.
And this is yet another reminder that Rudy is still getting the hang of actually being in the middle of action. Prior to transferring his consciousness into a clone younger body of Rex Splode, his consciousness instead operated Robot.
Before all this was just a video game for you. Now you're here, in person, playing for real.
Catching back up with Debbie, we see her attending a Spouses of Superheroes support group. That is what the SOS on the card Olga gave her stood for. And of course, SOS is also the Morse code call for help. Now this was reminiscent of the support group we saw in Avengers Endgame for those lost loved ones to the blip.
Gotta move on.
And we saw a similar support group in The Boys for people who lost loved ones because of soups.
Sitting here in your little share circle.
And then we go to Burger Mart, a restaurant that keeps popping up in this series. It was Mark's first job, it was where Mark met with Cecil to get back into superheroing, and it's where Adam Eve's dad is working following the destruction of his workplace in Chicago. Rudy is trying a burger for the first time, and Monster Girl says,
"This is the guy who used to eat food through his butt."
And this is a reference to Rudy's old body before he switched into his clone body.
Yes, I'm discovering that.
When Debbie goes out for drinks with another member from her group, she learns that his deceased wife was none other than Green Ghost.
Alana?
She was the Green Ghost.
Now, Green Ghost was one of the original members of the Guardians of the Globe that we saw Omni-Man brutally murder in the first episode of Season 1. Now, I know I've said it before, but again, I just have to compliment how much this series has focused on Debbie and her trauma, guilt, and grief after what Nolan did to her.
You shouldn't come back to the group. Wouldn't be a safe space with you there.
Back at the dorm, we hear Mark and William talk about Rick.
I always imagined we'd be here at Upstate together.
Now, you remember Rick from last season when this happened.
Oh my god! Rick?
Mark assures William that Cecil says Rick is doing better, a reference to Rick being taken back to the GDA at the end of Season 1, Episode 6.
Talk about Seance Dog, he's my favorite.
Okay, so yeah, we do then see Seance Dog show up at the dorm looking for Mark. Now, Seance Dog, of course, isn't a real person in the Invincible universe. He is a fictional character. So Mark is immediately suspicious of what kind of trick is being played on him.
Who are you?
And I love the explanation Seance Dog gives him for how he's there.
But there exists myriad other worlds where dogs and magic are as real as the air you breathe.
It really reminded me of all the great Doctor Strange lines where he talks about the vastness of the multiverse.
In the grand calculus of the multiverse, their sacrifice means infinitely more than their lives.
Now this of course also sticks with this season's multiversal theme. You'll also notice that Seance Dog has green magic, a nod back to when Doctor Strange had the Time Stone. So it turns out that this isn't some multiversal Seance Dog, and it's actually a Thraxan, shape-shifting aliens who are a direct parody of Marvel's Skrulls. So the Thraxa tells Mark that they need his help back on their planet, which of course we learn later on is a big lie, but more on that in just a bit. Mark agrees to go, and it's here that we see Amber has become far more understanding about Mark's responsibilities as a superhero.
I'm sorry, but
No, stop. Don't apologize. Never apologize for saving lives.
Cecil orders Mark to stay on Earth, and Mark ignores him, foreshadowing that despite Mark having a noble reason to leave, he's like his father in the fact that he won't take orders.
You work for me here on Earth.
Look, a lot of people died because of me, Cecil. This is a chance to save lives.
On the ship, we see Mark lose connection while on the phone with Amber as the ship leaves Earth's atmosphere. And this reminded me, of course, of this scene in Avengers Infinity War when Tony loses Pepper.
Come back here, Tony. I swear to God, come back here right now. Come back. Boss, we're losing her.
So, when Mark arrives on Thraxa, it becomes clear that the one who brought him there lied so he would agree to come. He was actually just there because their monarch sent for him. And their monarch is none other than Omni-Man.
It's been a while.
Now, I thought it was really clever that they called him Monarch because they are bug-like creatures with big eyes, and also, of course, because Omni-Man would become a Monarch type of ruler in another planet after leaving Earth. Now, real quick, I want to jump back to earlier in the episode with all the Seance Dog imagery, such as the toy and the poster. Now, this implies that Thraxa was watching Mark and doing some investigating before revealing himself, and after seeing his poster and his decision to keep the Seance Dog action figure, he decided to portray himself as that character. So let's also take a look back at Omni-Man. He now has armor covering the O on his chest, likely because he's ditched the name Omni-Man. He's also no longer wearing his signature red gloves, likely because they were a reminder of his blood-stained hands after almost killing Mark in the Season 1 finale. It's also likely that Omni-Man is the one who told Thraxa to pretend like the planet was in trouble because he knows that his son has a good heart and would travel across galaxies to help them. Now in the comics, Thraxa is also the planet that Omni-Man traveled to after leaving Earth. He needed to find another planet he could conquer and really fast so that he could avoid punishment from the Viltrumite Empire. Now, as we heard mentioned in this episode, Thraxa age far faster than humans.
We age much quicker than you humans, you know.
Now the comics also have a huge reveal coming up, which will be the end of the mid-season finale, which we're going to talk about next week. I am so excited to break that guys down for you. So, want to shout out the writer of this video, Mr. Colton Ogburn. You can find his Twitter and mine below, and let us know what you thought of the episode down in the comments or at either of us on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.